everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time to talk about WrestleMania 36 Part 1. What an eventful, yeah, it was eventful, wasn't it? Weird, certainly, yes, weird is the correct term to use, for a multitude of reasons, by the way, especially after that main event, but it was eventful. So we're going to talk about all the eventful things that happened in this very video. That's right, strap yourselves in tight, because this is what happened at WrestleMania Part 1. We'll just give a brief mention to the one and only pre-show match, which was Cesaro taking on Drew Gulak, which on paper is like an excellent sort of indie dream match main event, isn't it? But it was only the pre-show here. It only got really a few minutes. They did all right. There were some nifty exchanges and stuff until Cesaro picked up the win with an airplane spin into a bit of a slam into the pinfall. Yeah, okay, that was a bit old school for a finish, wasn't it? Maybe they're taking it back all the way to WrestleMania 1. Stephanie McMahon opens the show with a little bit of a promo where she basically says that despite the circumstances going on around the world, WWE are going to entertain us like Robbie Williams. Now you could say that WWE deserve to feel proud of themselves for carrying on and entertaining us despite the circumstances, as Stephanie said, but you could also say that maybe they're at fault here for trying to position themselves as heroes in such an inappropriate situation. There's various different ways you could feel about this, but the sort of message I took away from it was, we're here now, let's just make the most of it. We also get the answer to a question that I never even considered actually when thinking about this show. Who's going to sing America the Beautiful? And in quite a nice idea, we got a mashup of some of the opening songs from WrestleManias throughout the event's history. Aretha Franklin, John Legend, Boyz II Men. No Pitbull doing Green Light, which was a shame, but generally I thought it was quite a nice idea. Then we head to the arena where we are welcomed by the host of WrestleMania, Rob Gronkowski. He cuts a bit of a promo and does all right, to be fair. Obviously, he's incredibly hyped. Then he invites Mojo Rawley along to kick off the show with him. And I'm starting to think that Adam Pacitti booked this WrestleMania because Mojo is, of course, his favourite little boy in the world. Well, big boy really, he's quite large, isn't he? Shouldn't have said that. I feel bad now. The first proper match of WrestleMania this year is the women's tag team title match between the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane, and Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. And the first thing you'll notice that'll hit you about this match, if you haven't been watching any of the Raw and SmackDowns in the build-up to this, the empty arena shows, you'll notice that the trash talk is very audible because obviously there's no crowd noise, and yeah, there was a lot of trash talk on this show. Some of it good, some of it not as good. But to be fair, I don't know if Kairi and Asuka's trash talk was good or not, because it was all in Japanese, and they used it to rile up the crowd at one point. Like, they stood at the crowd barrier and started shouting in Japanese at just nobody, out into the ether. It was quite existential in a way. There's quite a lot of heel domination until Nikki Cross gets the hot tag from Alexa Bliss and runs wild. She looks to have Asuka beat down in the middle of the ring, but Kairi saves the day, breaking up the pinfall with an insane elbow from the top. And a little bit, if I'm not being too harsh, a little bit of a slow count by the referee just to cover the timing issues there. And a little bit later on, Asuka looks to have the match won with the Asuka lock locked in on Nikki Cross, but then Alexa Bliss does the same as Kairi earlier, hitting Twisted Bliss off the top to break up the potential finish of the match. And a few moments later, we get the actual finish of the match, Nikki Cross taking out Kairi Sane with a nice rolling neck breaker, and Alexa Bliss tagging in and hitting another Twisted Bliss to the legs of Kairi Sane, but by God, it got the job done, and there are new women's tag team champions. So we get a title change to start the show, and next up we get the match we've all been waiting for. King Corbin versus Elias. Corbin's out first, he gets in the ring and gets a mic and says, right, basically Elias is in no condition to compete, he's not even here, I've not seen him backstage, so referee, begin the 10 count and award me this match by forfeit. / count out. But despite being thrown off a platform on SmackDown recently, Elias turns up, so brave, so babyface. Baron Corbin gets out of the ring and charges him, but Elias has got the guitar and just smashes it over Baron Corbin's back. The match begins properly, it goes back and forth for a little while, but what I noticed was when Elias was on offense, he seemed a lot more serious and a lot more straightforward and focused than we're perhaps used to seeing him. This was a pretty good look for Elias, to be fair. But it did have a bit of an abrupt finish. Corbin goes for the pinfall with his feet on the ropes, but the referee spots it, and then Elias Elias, while Corbin is arguing with the ref, gets a roll-up of his own, potentially with a handful of tights as well, and picks up the mildly surprising victory, I will say. I say that because this may be seen as a bit of a weird result, with Elias being chucked off that platform on SmackDown. How can he possibly beat Baron Corbin, who you could say is higher than him on the totem pole anyway? But at the same time, you could also argue that that guitar shot at the beginning was kind of a great equalizer, and it helped level the odds because both were going into the match beaten up. And you know what? Even though this was never going to be the best match on the show, I think Elias came across genuinely quite heroic here. I thought, you know what, if anything's going to do good for him and lead to a bit of a push, this was the way to go. Next up, Becky Lynch defending the Raw Women's Championship against Shayna Baszler in a match that I think was one of the most surprising of the entire night. Becky turns up in her lovely customized truck to dead silence, which is a little bit weird. She makes her entrance and here comes Shayna, and yeah, I'll get on to why this was surprising in a second. This was quite a hard-hitting brawl, the best match on the show so far, easily. Shayna goes for the Kirifuda clutch early on, but Becky manages to drag herself out of the ring. A little bit later on, Becky goes for the disarmer a couple of times, but Shayna escapes to the apron, and on the apron, Becky hits a nice Uranagi right onto the apron, which of course, as we all know, is the hardest part of the ring. Baszler gets an armbar locked in, Becky fights out, so Baszler transitions into the disarmer, stealing her finisher. Once again, Becky escapes from that. You'd think she'd know how to escape from her own finisher, so that makes sense, but Shayna turns and just blasts her with a big knee to the face. Moments later, Shayna does get the Kirifuda clutch properly locked in this time, but over the top rope with Becky's feet on the apron, so she has to break on 5, like when Tajiri used to use the tarantula. Now that I've said that, I really wish Tajiri was on this show. Back in the ring though, Shayna does get the Kirifuda clutch locked in successfully again. She drags Becky to the floor. Becky rolls backwards, a bit like Bret Hart, plants her feet on the canvas. She's got Shayna down. 1, 2, 3. And Shayna has lost, and Becky's still the champion. That's why this match was one of the most surprising on the show, purely because of the result. And while the match was pretty good, I can't say I agree with this booking decision, because if we look back to Elimination Chamber, Shayna just totally punked out like half of the women's division, and that all seems to have been for nothing. Really baffling stuff there, not a decision I agree with, but let's move on to the next match on the show, another title match, this time Sami Zayn defending the IC title against Daniel Bryan. And of course there were a lot of people at ringside for this match. Sami Zayn had Cesaro and Nakamura with him, and Daniel Bryan had Drew Gulak in his corner. And to give him a few yes chants, even though there's no crowd at this WrestleMania, Gronk and Mojo are on the little platform above the ring to one side, and they're just loving life. They're just having some bants, as we all would, given the circumstances. Sami stalls at the start of this match for a long time, like 3 or 4 minutes of just running around the ring, frustrating Bryan. Cesaro and Nakamura are blocking Bryan's path as he chases him, so eventually Drew Gulak gets sick of this and takes out Sami Zayn's henchman. So Zayn tries to walk away and take a count-out loss but keep a hold of the title, and for a second Bryan teases letting him do so, but then obviously chases him down and drags him back to the ring. And at this point, Sami is just begging Bryan to stop and to let him go and to not beat him up, please. And Sami Zayn, it turns out, would only be the second biggest beg on this entire show. At this point, I was thinking, why don't they let Sami wrestle anymore? Various people have been suggesting that he wrestles like a manager, and I agree with them. I think that's true. He doesn't really get a lot of offense in. He's always very weaselly and cowardly, but almost to the point where it's too much, and we want to remind ourselves that he is actually a wrestler, and a very good one. There is a scary dive at one stage from Bryan to the outside of the ring, and he crashes right into the crowd barrier, but he's okay, thankfully. But it is one of those scary moments we get when watching Daniel Bryan matches these days. He gets Sami Zayn back in the ring. Gulak, though, on the outside, gets taken out by Cesaro and Nakamura, who have been down for a long time and finally get back into the match. But then they are taken out by another big dive from Daniel Bryan. Bryan looks to be firmly in control now. He heads up top, he comes off the top rope, and Sami Zayn boots him out of midair with a midair sort of haluva kick counter and falls on Bryan, and that's enough to get the win. And Sami Zayn has defeated Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. That's possibly the biggest win of his career. It's certainly in WWE. Well, certainly on Raw or SmackDown. Maybe not in NXT. It depends it's all relative, isn't it? Next up, possibly my favourite match of the night, the SmackDown Tag Team title triple threat match between John Morrison, representing himself and The Miz, Jimmy Uso, representing the Usos, and Kofi Kingston, representing the New Day. There's a nice exchange to start off this match with everybody ducking super kicks and flipping back onto their feet, a great display of agility by all three men, and there were some obviously big risky spots as well, because even though there's no crowd there, this is still a WrestleMania ladder match. The first one in my mind is Kofi springboarding through the gap in the middle of a ladder, but being caught by both opponents and just dumped violently to the outside of the ring. And as the match goes on, it becomes clear who the MVP of this match is. It's John Morrison. The first big impressive thing he does is when Jimmy Uso is laid on a ladder, which is kind of wedged in the corner between the top and middle ropes. So John Morrison steps back onto the ring post and does like an insane corkscrew, almost like a bit of a Starship Pain, clipping Jimmy Uso and falling to the canvas. And it's just so impressive. A little bit later on, Kofi is on one corner, John Morrison's on another corner, and Morrison just tightrope walks across the top of it like bloody Phoenix. Or the Undertaker, more like Phoenix, more on the Phoenix end of that scale than the Undertaker, and just jumps into a huge Spanish fly on Kofi back into the ring. That was maybe the most impressive spot of the entire night. All three men end up battling atop two different ladders to try and get the two belts, which are on one of those like triangular hook things above the ring, and everyone gets a hand on it. And then eventually Jimmy and Kofi work together, double headbutt to Morrison. He falls down onto a ladder bridge, and Jimmy and Kofi are just left holding the triangle with no belt on it. And we pan down, and Morrison has snatched the belts as he's fallen, and he's won the match. And yes, it's a bit of a lucky finish, but you can't really say that he didn't earn it. This was a wonderful performance by John Morrison. Next up, Seth Rollins versus Kevin Owens. The whole storyline behind this match being that Rollins has had so many WrestleMania moments beating the likes of Lesnar, Triple H, whereas Kevin Owens has had no real WrestleMania moments, no big signature ones to call his own. Rollins goes for the stomp immediately, but Kevin Owens gets out of the way and takes it to Rollins, but Rollins fights back with a backdrop, I think, and a big Falcon Arrow, both on the apron, which once again, say it with me, is the hardest part of the ring. Cheers guys, if you did say that at home. Whenever Rollins is on top in this match, there is so much trash talk from Seth Rollins. There's a lot of trash talk. He even brings up Kevin Owens' kids at one point. He goes for two stomps. Kevin Owens evades both of them. That's three he's now avoided over the course of the match, and he fights back with a lovely desperation DDT. Seth goes for another stomp, which Kevin Owens reverses into a nice pop-up powerbomb for two, and by this point Rollins has had enough. He senses the match slipping away from him, so he rolls out the ring, gets the ring bell, and just clocks Owens with it, and the referee calls for the bell, which Rollins has to then give back to the timekeeper, who then rings it. And it works in terms of the story, like Rollins is again depriving Kevin Owens of this big WrestleMania moment. But I'm thinking at this stage on, what? A DQ finish to this huge singles match at WrestleMania, it just feels really wrong. Well, luckily, I was wrong, and the match wasn't really over yet. It kind of was, but they started again. Rollins is on his way out of the arena. Owens grabs a microphone and bravely calls him back and says, no, it's not ending like that. I'm not taking the win like that. Get back here. We'll do this again. No DQ. Rollins is like, all right, you asked for this then, and starts battering Kevin Owens. Ring steps, chair shots, more vicious trash talk, such as my favourite line of the whole thing, "You were the one who made this challenge." It's like an English translation of a Japanese fighting game. But Kevin Owens fights back with the very weapon that Rollins used to end this match the first time around, the ring bell. Clocks Rollins a couple of times with the ring bell. Rollins falls onto the announce table, and Kevin Owens heads somewhere off camera. We don't quite see where he's gone yet. We pan out and we see that Owens is headed to the top of the WrestleMania sign above the announce table. He looks down and just launches himself with a beautiful, like, senton / back elbow, absolutely taking out Rollins on the announce table, and both men are down and out. There's Kevin's WrestleMania moment. He's got it in the bag. He drags himself back to his feet, gets Rollins in the ring, and Rollins is just begging. And when I mentioned that, you know, there's been a lot of begging on this show, Rollins wasn't even the biggest beg on this show either. We'll get to that in just a few matches time. But now Owens has got Rollins up in the ring. Rollins is begging, and Owens just drops him with a stunner. 1, 2, 3, and Kevin Owens, rightly I'd say, wins the match. Before the next match, we head to the little platform that Mojo and Gronk have definitely been on all night watching the action. Don't ask questions about that, guys. And they are interrupted by R-Truth, the 24/7 champion, who decides to hide next to the only other two people ringside capable of beating him in a wrestling match. Instead of just hiding at home or elsewhere in the arena, he decides to head for people, and large people at that as well. I've got to question your strategy there, R-Truth. Gronk hits R-Truth with an elbow, sort of, and that was like almost as good as Gronk's elbow was. That's how weird this elbow was. He's new, he'll learn, hopefully. It's strong enough to take down R-Truth. He falls, Gronk covers him. 1, 2, Mojo Rawley breaks up the pinfall. He covers R-Truth. 1, 2, 3. Mojo Rawley is the new 24/7 champion, and the cracks have begun to appear in the strong, hyped up friendship between Mojo Rawley and Rob Gronkowski. Next up, the penultimate match of the night, Goldberg taking on Braun Strowman for Goldberg's Universal Championship. And I'm thinking, well, this isn't on last. the title is not changing hands. No chance in hell. At the start of the match, during the introduction, Strowman roars at Goldberg and Goldberg just smirks at him, almost laughs at him, and I'm thinking, yeah, this isn't going to go well for Braun, not at all. Goldberg charges, Strowman moves, Goldberg stops himself from running into the ring post. He's learning. He turns around, Strowman goes for the power slam, Goldberg slips out the back, spear, and it's the beginning of the end for Braun Strowman. 2 more spears and Strowman kicks out of 2, and I'm thinking, okay, they're not making him look too weak. He's kicked out of 3 spears in total. Goldberg hits a 4th spear, goes for the jackhammer, and I'm like, don't go for the jackhammer, not on a man as large as Braun Strowman. Strowman slips out the back and hits a power slam, and then another power slam, and then another power slam, and then a 4th power slam, a spinning one, 1, 2, 3, and Goldberg has been squashed at WrestleMania. And that of course means that Braun Strowman is the Universal Champion. I am shocked. I thought they were going to keep the belt on Goldberg and wait for Reigns to come back and then they'd do the match they wanted to do at WrestleMania. But I guess Goldberg just wasn't sticking around for very long, so they had to get it onto the next guy, and that guy was Braun Strowman. Very strange result here, but not the strangest thing on the entire show, because now we have the main event, the Boneyard match between The Undertaker and AJ Styles, and this was just something else. So we're there, we're in the Boneyard, we're on location, everything's all camera angles and sound effects and music, all very Hollywood. A hearse pulls up, Undertaker's music's playing, the hearse backs into the graveyard, the back of the hearse opens, the casket opens, a couple of druids get out and open the casket in the back, and it's bloody AJ Styles. What a cheeky little man he is. How can Undertaker top that entrance? He can do so with badass biker rock and roll as he rides his motorcycle into the Boneyard. I'm going to stop myself there, and just to clarify for everyone watching, I'm not making any of this up. I didn't fall asleep during this match and have some kind of weird fever dream. Everything that I'm about to say actually did happen in this match, okay? Let's just bear that in mind, please. AJ tries to get things started with some solid fundamentals, a rock to the face, but Taker's ready, he avoids it, and he's just on Styles, and is just beating him down. And when I was saying that Rollins and Sami Zayn weren't the biggest begs of WrestleMania Night 1, AJ Styles is the biggest beg. He begged so much in this match, but not right at the start. Taker is in control, but Styles isn't in full-on begging mode quite yet. Taker gets a lead pipe and goes for Styles. Styles ducks, and Taker's arm just goes straight through the hearse window, and he pulls it out, and it's all bleeding. Like Goldberg. That's a reference to Goldberg in WCW, isn't it? AJ turns the tide with a handful of dirt in the eyes and a low blow, classic heel tactics. You can take the boy out of the ring, but you can't take the ring out of the... You can't take the heel tactics out of the boy in the ring when he's not in the ring. They brawl some more. AJ ends up falling into the open grave that he dug for Taker prior to Taker's arrival, but it's not over yet because here's Gallows and Anderson accompanied by some sweet guitar licks in the background. Oh hell yes. This may have been the most badass match I have ever seen in my life. Gallows and Anderson are joined by a small army of druids who are not on Taker's side, but Taker just beats all of them down. The druids, Gallows, Anderson, but Styles is back, and here we go. We're into the end game of this match. Can you call it a match? Watch this for yourself. AJ blindsides Taker, smashing a headstone over his back, spearing him through a wall, and Taker is against a tree, just beaten and battered and old, and Styles tells him he's old multiple times, and Taker defiantly flips him the bird. Remember what I was saying about this being the most badass match I've ever seen? It rings true, lads. It rings very true indeed. AJ hits Taker with a shovel, Taker falls into the open grave, and Styles gets in the, what's it called? The grave digger? The grave digging contraption? The vehicle with the big digger on the big scoop that buries people. He gets in that. He's about to bury The Undertaker alive, but The Undertaker is somehow behind him and is teleported to behind Styles on the machine. Again, all of this is real. Styles runs away. They head up a ladder to the roof of the chapel, the Boneyard house that's in the Boneyard. They're battling on the roof of the chapel, the building, whatever it is. Styles tries to run away. Undertaker stops him with fire. Styles runs back. Here come Gallows and Anderson. Taker takes care of them, and he's got Styles. Finally, he's got him by the neck, and he chokeslams him. And he chokeslams him off the side of the building, and that is not yet the end of the match. Taker climbs down, he grabs AJ, he's walking him towards the open grave, and Styles is like, don't bury me, please don't bury me. And Taker's like, come on, let's go out like a man. If someone was trying to bury me alive, I would not care about going out like a man. That would be one of the last things on my mind. But then Taker says, you know what, I'm not going to bury you. Few people have given me a fight like you have given me right now, and you've won my respect. And I'm thinking, yes, of course. He's AJ Styles. He's a former NWA TNA X Division champion. He should already have your respect. But like any good babyface, Undertaker was just lying, and Big Boot Styles, he falls into the grave. And again, like any good babyface, Undertaker brings WrestleMania Part 1 to an end by burying a man alive and riding off on his bike into the sunset. Undertaker wins the match. One of Styles' signature gloves is just left sticking out of this grave that's been covered over now. And that was the match. That was the main event of WrestleMania Night 1. Oh, and I forgot to mention, of course, before Taker left, he unveiled what the headstone said, and it had AJ Styles' name on it all along. Taker was never going to lose this match, but wow. I mean, we all had an idea that it was probably going to be something like this, but it was so macho and so like overtly badass. It ended up sort of accidentally being one of the funniest matches I've ever seen. And yes, I didn't, like it in the traditional sense, but I was entertained. Partly because it made me laugh a lot, but that's a form of entertainment, right? And yeah, that's how WrestleMania Night 1 ended. I don't really know what to make of it. Obviously, the lack of a crowd affected the quality of everything, but I think my favourite match was probably that ladder match for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Owens versus Rollins was really good as well. That main event was something else, and we had a couple of very surprising results too. Goldberg losing in minute to Braun Strowman, and Becky Lynch, most shockingly of all I think, retaining the Raw Women's Championship over Shayna Baszler. And that's it for WrestleMania 36 Night 1. Do let me know what you think in the comment section down below if you watched it, and I have no doubt that you will leave all of your opinions without reservation. I'll see you at the end of Night 2 for another one of these videos, and keep your eyes peeled on this channel as well for all of our reactions when they come out a little bit later on. Thanks once again, and I'll see you very soon.